Jordan, you're up first. Just take a deep breath. I'll start your stopwatch time when you begin.
Can you hear me? Just to make sure that I'm not muted.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I am good. Good afternoons, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Jordan Gates, and I would like to ask you all a question. Who likes gardening or farming? Well, I like gardening. Without it, there'd be no food. Each one of us reaps the benefits of farming, as it sustains us with the same food we eat. At the same time, however, it destroys the surrounding earth. This picture shows the effects of agricultural runoff towards a body of water. Did you know there are at least 400 known dead zones around the world, and each one is caused by one serious problem? You guessed it, agricultural pollution. Now, the question is, how can we reduce these dead zones? Dead zones are increasing in size and population every year since the 1960s. For example, the Baltic Sea. The Baltic Dead Zone is the most known around the world. It is home to 7 of the world's 10 largest marine dead zones. This picture of the Baltic Sea shows how contaminated it is right now. The chemical fertilizers that were mostly found in the Baltic Sea were OCPs and PCBs, which is used in farming a lot in the 9 countries surrounding the Baltic Sea. Also, approximately 90% of the marine life are either threatened or they lose the area of the Baltic Sea due to the dead zone. The Baltic Sea is the largest dead zone in the whole world. Locally near the United States, though, there is a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf of Mexico is located under the Mississippi River, which causes growth of the dead zone in the first place. The size of the dead zone is 6,000 to 7,000 square miles. The picture here shows the difference of the color between the healthy part of the ocean to the contaminated part of it. The Mississippi River supplies the dead zone with nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus, and those 2 nutrients are found the most in the dead zone. This causes algae blooms to increase as the input of nutrients increase, and this takes away the oxygen in the water. The dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico is ranked as the 8th largest dead zone in the whole world. Imagine the meatballs as nutrients and the noodles as the ocean water. Right now, the spaghetti and the meatballs represent a dead zone. The meatballs are smothering the noodles. So, to improve the ratio between the meatball and the noodles, I'm going to remove a few meatballs at intervals of over time, as you can see here. And this will result in the perfect ratio of a serving of spaghetti and meatballs. So the question now is, what is the solution of removing the nutrients from these dead zones? Well, the solution is eco-friendly fertilizers. Eco-friendly fertilizers are organic fertilizers that they do not have huge amount of chemicals in it. This helps balance the nutrients that plants need, but it will not cause huge amounts of nutrients to run off because it will be absorbed by the plants. There are many different eco-friendly fertilizers that people could use. There are many examples like kelp, cow manure, and even limestone. Kelp would be a good eco-friendly fertilizer compared to chemical fertilizers. It contains potassium and little nitrogen, but the true benefits are the long-term effect they can have on the plants. It has been shown to stimulate soil development. It also enables plants and crops to develop a higher tolerance for extremes of temperature. Kelp also has over 70 vitamins and minerals. Cow manure would also be a good substitute. Cow manure is rich in nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur that feed plants and soil alike. It needs to be properly composted before use though, but the process is easy to do. This would help improve soil's moisture holding capacity. Limestone is another eco-friendly fertilizer that farmers would be able to use. Limestone is used to balance pH levels in soils. It contains calcium, and the nutrient helps with overall plant growth. It also contains magnesium, which encourages stronger and healthier plants. Limestone also adds a healthy addition to the soil. So, what would you choose? The top left picture or the bottom right picture? Well, for me, I would rather the ocean look like this picture right here, the bottom right. It looks healthy, and there's so much life in it. As you can tell, the coral looks fine, and the fish look like they're living their life. And the way to do this is eco-friendly fertilizers. It would push society into this direction, which would help the marine ecosystem overall. Not only should we use eco-friendly fertilizers along the ocean line, but along the river as well. Rivers also supply big bodies of water from the farming beside it, so this could help oceans in the future. This would also prevent dead zones from forming. Now, it is our turn to make a difference. Are we going to take this leap together? I will. Will you? Thank you.
Woohoo!
Oh,
Awesome.
I started talking so fast and I got so scared.
There you go. Let me pause it.
Sides run off into a nearby river or ocean, thus creating the dead zones. That brings up the question, how can we reduce the number of dead zones in our oceans? The main causes of dead zones are fertilizers and pesticide runoff, and the excess nutrients they put in the water. When a dead zone forms in the ocean, the oxygen levels slowly start to decrease. The oxygen levels make it almost impossible to make use of the water in the dead zone. The lower the oxygen levels are, the less life there is below the surface. As you can see in these charts, common fish such as striped bass and hard clam need a minimum of 5 to 6 milligrams per liter of oxygen to survive. However, the only life forms that can survive with a minimum of 1 milligram per liter are worms and other small animals. The fish in the dead zones die, which lowers fish produce. Having a great number of dead zones can not only impact the ocean, but human lives. It also causes a decrease in clean water and an increase in algae growth. Because of the algae growth and the excess nutrients in the water, it becomes undrinkable. Dead zones lessen food supply since they kill fish and other sea creatures, and because of the oxygen deprivation, fishermen have a decrease in the fish that they catch, which results in job losses. The decrease in fishermen not only affect the economy, but certain human lifestyles. Dead zones are more common than you would think. They are found all over the world. As you can see here, the red dots represent the coastal dead zones, and the blue areas show the open ocean dead zones. As you can see here, they are found all over the globe, and it affects everywhere in the world. The Gulf of Mexico is the biggest reoccurring dead zone. It reoccurs during harvesting season for farmers. Because it is reoccurring, the size does vary, but is typically 6,000 to 7,000 square miles. The excess nutrients enters the Gulf by traveling through the Mississippi River. Mississippi is known for being an agricultural state, which explains the overuse of fertilizers and pesticides. It is estimated that about 40% of seafood in the United States comes from the Gulf of Mexico, and with the dead zone slowly increasing in size, the amount of seafood available will slowly start to drop. And as you can see in these pictures, you can tell the difference between the darker area where the dead zone is and the blue area where the non-polluted ocean is. The Baltic Sea is the biggest permanent dead zone in the entire world. It is about 70,000 square kilometers, which is roughly the size of Ireland. It has been increasing since 1606. You can see on this map how it has expanded from 1606 to 2012. The sea is made up of mostly dead zones. Because of the excess nutrients in the sea, the water is green. Because the sea is so contaminated year-round, it isn't used for anything. It is famous for being extremely dangerous because of the chemicals and excess nutrients found. The sea is almost entirely unusable because of these dead zones. Creating laws and regulations to prevent excess fertilizers would be one of the main solutions to this issue. Laws such as the heavy metal rule would have been proven to reduce dead zones throughout the world. The heavy metal rule prevents harmful chemicals from getting into the ocean and creating dead zones. It limits how many chemicals can be put into fertilizers and pesticides. This rule is already in place in several countries, but if we use it worldwide, it could have a global impact. The heavy metal rule is used in areas of Europe and other places where dead zones are especially bad. The law has been very effective in these areas, and by enforcing laws like the heavy metal rule, there will be little to no excess fertilizers, which will result in little to no dead zones. If we want to create healthy oceans, like the ones on this slide, then we need to start enforcing certain laws to help reduce these dead zones and agricultural pollution. Pollution is one of the biggest environmental problems in the world. Dead zones will continue to grow in our oceans if we do not enforce these laws and eventually make our oceans useless to society. Now, going back to my example from earlier, I have two glasses of water. One is clear and the other is dark. Now, raise your hand if you would use the dyed water. Now, raise your hand if you would use the clear water. I personally use the clear water. And if we require regulations on fertilizers, we can turn our oceans from this to this. Thank you for your attention. Have a good rest of the day.
Woo, good job, Lauren.
Discussing the issue of dead zones in our. Imagine you are walking outside on a beautiful day. The sun is shining, flowers are blooming, and birds are chirping. As you take your next step, all of this is taken away. You are trapped and there is no sign of life anywhere. You have no hope for survival. Aquatic animals all across our oceans have the risk of entering a similar trap each day. As nutrient-polluted water flows into our oceans, eutrophication occurs. Eutrophication takes place when levels of nitrogen, phosphorus, and other nutrients in the water are elevated. This leads to algal blooms. The algae blocks sunlight from entering the water that many marine organisms need to survive. As the algae die, bacteria begin to decompose it, which leads to oxygen levels plummeting. This kills off animals or causes them to move away from these areas because they cannot survive with such low levels of oxygen. These areas are known as dead zones and are mainly caused by a variety of human activities. The source from which this polluted water comes from is mainly fertilizers, manure, wastewater, and industrial waste. As large numbers of fish and other marine life die from entering dead zones, ecosystems are greatly impacted. This in turn affects food chains and lowers biodiversity in the oceans. There are more than 400 dead zones in our oceans, and they are continuing to grow. In fact, one of the largest dead zones in the world is in the Arabian Sea and is nearly 63,000 square miles. Another large dead zone is found in the Baltic Sea. However, this issue is a problem locally as well. To name a few, there are dead zones found in the Gulf of Mexico, Lake Erie, and Chesapeake Bay. The Gulf of Mexico dead zone is one of the largest ever measured. In 2017, it measured 8,776 square miles, the largest it has ever been, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, also known as NOAA. In June of 2019, the NOAA predicted the Gulf of Mexico dead zone to be 7,829 square miles that summer. However, they stated in August it measured 6,592 square miles, which is still not a pleasing size. The Gulf of Mexico accounts for much of the seafood industry. According to the Environmental Defense Fund, the Gulf of Mexico supplies more than 40% of our domestic seafood and provides billions of dollars a year in wages for the fishing and tourism industries across 5 states. If the size of the dead zone in the Gulf is not reduced, many coastal states' economies will suffer greatly. The main cause of the dead zone in the Gulf is agricultural runoff from the Mississippi River watershed. Farmers commonly use fertilizers that have high levels of phosphorus and nitrogen. These fertilizers are sometimes over-applied or applied right before rainfall. In these cases, the plants are not able to fully absorb the nutrients and then is washed away into the watershed. From here, it is later deposited into our oceans. Manure from livestock, which is enriched with nutrients, is often not managed well. That reaches the watershed also. If the correct measures are not taken to prevent this, marine life will continue to suffer. In order to reduce the number of dead zones in our oceans, I believe we must focus on eliminating nutrient pollution from agricultural practices. With this being said, what can be done to reduce nutrient pollution while being as cost-effective as possible? I believe the most efficient way to do this is by incorporating a pay-for-performance program for farmers, also known as PFP. This approach rewards farmers for the amount of nutrient reduction they're able to achieve. Result-based payments can limit the amount of nutrients in runoff. Windrock International has created a how-to guide that shows how to approach a PFP program most effectively. They have recently done pilot testing for farms in Iowa and Vermont. First, they offered a certain payment amount to farmers if they met the target of phosphorus loss for their farm annually. This approach focuses specifically on the most cost-effective and environmentally beneficial way to achieve these goals. They must identify which practices would cost less than the incentive payment they are trying to receive. The testing did show beneficial results. At the Upper North Fork headwaters in Vermont, results show that 88 hundredths of a pound of phosphorus per year could be reduced if farmers fulfill the identified practice that costs less than the payment of $10 for each pound of phosphorus reduced. Therefore, if all farmers in this watershed would participate in the PFP program, the amount of phosphorus reduction would be over 4 times the amount of phosphorus reduction that is desired for the total maximum daily load in the current U.S. Clean Water Act. In the past, the government has funded specific management practices to reduce nutrient pollution. This is often referred to as a pay-for-practice program. However, this program does not take into consideration specific field conditions, nor does it give farmers much flexibility. Farmers become unwilling to adopt a pay-for-practice program because they want to choose what they believe is best for their field specifically. According to the USDA, it has been estimated that pay-for-performance programs are 4 times more cost-effective than the pay-for-practice approach that some states currently use. Therefore, a performance-based policy is the most beneficial solution rather than a practice-based policy because it is much more cost-effective. Rather than using a multitude of inefficient abatement measures, result-based payments would encourage farmers to maximize best management practices, or BMPs, subsidized by the government. Every field across the nation is different. They vary in soil type, slope, distance to water, and an abundance of other things. Therefore, a pay-for-performance approach would promote farmers to choose which BMP would show the most benefit for their field. Money would not be wasted for implementing BMPs that will not show results on some farms. In conclusion, the most beneficial way to reduce the number of dead zones in our oceans is to implement a pay-for-performance program for farmers. Farmers need to come together and have a mind as one.
I found this on the web.
Each component of my proposed solution, the amount of nutrients in our bodies of water could be reduced. Therefore, dead zones will not continue to grow and our aquatic life can be saved. Thank you.
Yes. Very, very good. Very good. Let me pause the recording. Forward button. Just take a deep breath, and you got this, Cassandra.
Hello and good afternoon. My name is Cassandra Arguello. Fertilizers have helped improve the health and productivity of crops for farmers. They contain nutrients not only to improve the crop's health and increase the crop yield, but also help enhance the water retention capacity of the soil. How many of you would agree that fertilizers have caused positive effects on our environment? Well, would you believe me if I told you that dead zones are caused by the nutrients in the fertilizers? Unfortunately, this is true. When it rains, excessive nutrients from fertilizers, mainly nitrogen and phosphorus, run off into rivers and eventually the ocean, where they cause excessive algae growth. This is known as nutrient pollution or agricultural runoff. When this algae decays, the oxygen in the water is used up, creating hypoxic zones, also known as dead zones, where hardly any marine life can inhabit and survive because of the low levels of oxygen. Some fish can swim out of the hypoxic areas to areas with life-sustaining oxygen levels, while other marine animals cannot and die. As a result, the habitats and biodiversity are damaged. This can then affect the seafood industry. This is the Gulf of Mexico dead zone. An article from the EPA states that 78% of the continental US coastal waters exhibit overgrowth of algae. This dead zone contributes to this percentage as it covers up to 8,776 square miles and is still growing. According to SERC, the Science Education Resource Center, the Gulf of Mexico is a major source of the seafood industry, and the Nature Conservancy states that it accounts for more than 40% of the seafood in the US. SERC also states that the Gulf of Mexico supplies 72% of US harvested shrimp, 66% of harvest oysters, and 16% of commercial fish. This shows that if the dead zone continues to grow and worsen, fisheries and the seafood industry will face a great profit loss. As you can see, dead zones are a big problem in the US. But dead zones are not only affecting the US. Dead zones are present globally. There are 405 dead zones worldwide, and according to phys.org, dead zones are estimated to constitute 10% of the world's ocean. Besides greatly impacting seafood industries, nutrient runoff also has serious long-lasting negative effects on the ocean's environment and other species. The Baltic Sea dead zone, for example, covers an area of about 70,000 square miles. According to EOS.org, nutrient runoff has continued the growth of the dead zone since the 1950s. Because of the very harmful damage caused to the Baltic Sea's ecosystem and biodiversity, it will take years to heal. This is the same case for other dead zones worldwide. The hypoxia in the Chesapeake Bay is also at alarming levels. The eastern part of the bay is a center of poultry farming and produces large amounts of manure. According to National Geographic, besides the damage that the hypoxia causes to the ecosystem and the ocean, it can also harm people, marine mammals, and shore birds. Shellfish are filter feeders, and as they filter water, they are also absorbing toxic microbes that are associated with algal blooms. People and animals can become very ill and even die from shellfish poisoning if consumed. As we have seen, dead zones are a serious global issue that needs to be solved. This brings up the question, how do we reduce the number of dead zones in our oceans? The nutrient pollution that runs off into the ocean containing excessive amounts of nitrogen and phosphorus is the cause of the overgrowth of algae. These algae then create harmful dead zones. It is clear that to prevent the continued growth of current dead zones and the formation of new dead zones, there needs to be a solution that stops the excessive nutrients from entering the oceans. This would give the dead zones time to heal. So what is the solution? The solution is constructed wetlands. Constructed wetlands are artificial wetlands that treat wastewater and stormwater runoff to improve the quality of water before it reaches the ocean. Wetlandsinitiative.org states that the constructed wetlands do this by processes that absorb, transform, sequester, and remove nutrients as water slowly flows through the wetland. Constructed wetlands are a great solution because they are effective, affordable, and have multiple capabilities. A study in an article from the Environmental Evidence Journal says that data was collected from 93 articles, including 203 wetlands that were used for data extraction. Their conclusion on the study was that created and stored wetlands significantly reduced the transport of total nitrogen and total phosphorus and treated wastewater and urban and agricultural runoff. There was also research done on wetlands in the United Kingdom. According to the European Commission, research showed that the small field wetlands in the United Kingdom also reduce nutrient pollution. This shows the effectiveness of constructed wetlands. In the same research, they found that the constructed wetlands have the capability to also reduce soil erosion. Nutrients from fertilizers are present in the soil, and constructed wetlands help to prevent soil erosion and stop more nutrients from entering bodies of water. The soil that is collected in the wetlands can then be recycled for other uses. Constructed wetlands may seem like they require lots of money to be able to build and maintain them, but really constructed wetlands are affordable. Unlike aerated water treatment systems, constructed wetlands do not have high maintenance requirements and require a lot of electricity. According to EcoTeam, constructed wetlands result in a smaller carbon footprint because they can be gravity operated and do not require pumps, making them have low operation costs. Since constructed wetlands do not require pumps, they also cost less in maintenance. In conclusion, constructed wetlands have various capabilities, are effective, and are affordable, and putting them into practice around the world would make them a great solution to the issue of nutrient runoff and prevention of dead zones. The constructed wetlands remove excess nutrients, preventing them from entering our oceans and decreases the likelihood of algae blooms being formed in the ocean. This solution has been proven to work and can lead to healthy ocean biodiversity and ecosystems. Thank you.
Woo!